Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you the books that I read during the month of July. Okay, so July was hard for me. I hit a massive reading slump. I went on vacation for a week, and then we had my niece here for a week, which happened to be the same week as Reading Rush. But it was just like mental health wise, it was not a great month for me, and so I did not get a whole lot of reading done. I did well during Reading Rush, and that was pretty much about it. So this month I did read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 books, which I know you're like, you just said that you hit a reading slump and you didn't have a very good month. Yeah, so 6 of those were for Reading Rush. So outside of Reading Rush, I read 7 books for the entire remainder of the month. 3 of those were middle grade graphic novels, and then the rest were audiobooks. So yeah, it was not a great month. But anyway, we're just going to get into what I did read and discuss and all of the fun stuff. So let's start with, I have my huge stack of books here. Let's start with the middle grade graphic novels that I read. So I ended up reading this month Awkward, Brave, and Crush, which are all the Berrybrook, I think is the, Berrybrook Middle School graphic novel series by Svetlana Shmakova. And these, I was not expecting to like them as much as I did. My kids actually got the first 2 free from our library system. Instead of doing like a summer reading program this year, they sent out books for all the kids that live within the school district who were getting lunches. They would back the train up, back up the thought process. So during distance learning time, in order to provide meals for the kids in the school district, our school district had buses bus around school lunches so that you could take your kids down to the bus stop, you would pick up your lunch for the day and go home. And so we ended up taking advantage of that, and one of the days the library system sent out books to advertise their summer reading, and they basically just gave each of the bus drivers a huge box full of books and said, pass these out. So my kids ended up getting Awkward and Brave both free through that. And so that was amazing. And then I ended up buying Crush because I read these 2 and I love them so much, and we owned them. I knew I wanted to own Crush too, so I ended up buying the last one. But anyway, so these all, they are companions. They don't build off of each other. They are definitely companions. You do not have to read one to read the others. But the first one is Awkward. And this one, we follow our main character, Peppy. And it's Penelope, but she goes by Peppy. And her first day of middle school, she trips and is very embarrassed. And a young boy tries to help her, and she notices that he is getting a lot of weird looks from a lot of the people standing around, and so she pushes him off and is like, leave me alone, and is very rude to him. And so she feels really, really bad about that pretty much for the remainder of the year and keeps wanting to try to say sorry, but she's finding it really hard to say sorry to him. And she's realizing that maybe she wants to be his friend. And so it's kind of her exploration of that and kind of how to apologize to someone when you're caught in an awkward position, and you're in the wrong. Like, she knew she was in the wrong by doing what she did, and she needed to own up to that. On top of that, Peppy is in the art club at school, and the boy, I don't remember what his name is, Jamie, I think, is in the science club, and the 2 clubs have a huge rival with each other, and so that plays into the story as well. It was so well done. I could not believe how well done this was. Initially, I thought these might have been a little bit too old for my kids, but I really liked them. So yeah, and it kind of also gets into the whole like boy-girl friends aspect of things too, because yeah, that's something that is definitely a topic for middle school. All right, so the next one is Brave, and this one we're following our main character Jensen, and he is part of the art club. So he's kind of a side character in the first one, but we don't really get to know him very well in the first one. So he is in the art club as well, but he just kind of feels like an outsider. He's really, really struggling with school. He's just not fitting in really anywhere, and there's this. Even within the art club, there are a few kids that just make comments to him sometimes that aren't great about his appearance or about him being weird and things like that just don't make him feel very good. He also has a couple of kids at school that target him and pick on him, and so he wants to become friends with the newspaper group, and they kind of key in on him and they want him to be part of a project they're doing on bullying, and this is kind of a book about him discovering that he's being bullied and that he needs to address it. And I loved this book. So I gave this one 4 stars. It was really, really good. I probably could actually give all of these 5 stars, but out of all of them, this one is my favorite, Brave is, because it talks a lot about bullying and what that is and how some people don't realize they're doing it. And how to advocate for yourself when you are in that position. There's a lot of language in here about what bullying looks like, and I think that it's so important for kids to have this, to be able to be like, oh, well, maybe that's me. Maybe, this is, I have friends who don't make me feel good about myself, and, things like that. So it was so good. Highly, highly recommend this one. All right, so after those 2, I had to pick up Crush. Crush is the third one, and in this one we follow Jorge, who is once again a side character in Brave, and Jorge is a big dude. He is just bigger than a lot of the kids in his grade. He's an athlete, and he's kind of seen as the enforcer for a lot of the school. So he walks up, he protects kids from being bullied, he chases off the bulliers a lot, and just is kind of the bodyguard per se for a lot of the kids. So he is part of the athletic group, and he develops a crush on someone that's in the drama club, and he doesn't really know how to talk to her. He just feels really weird around her. It's just those fluttery middle grade crush sort of things, and how to talk to her. She has a boyfriend at the beginning of it, and kind of how that makes him feel, and how he kind of has to take a back seat and just respect her distance. And it talks a lot about boundaries and what's appropriate and what's inappropriate, and consent, and not in a sexual aspect, but just as far as, am I allowed to hold your hand, and things like that. Things that are middle grade appropriate, middle school appropriate, but also teaching the kids these foundational lessons on what's right in these kinds of situations. There is one boy in here that becomes a little bit stalker-ish, and he gets called out on it, and so that's addressed. It just addresses a lot of really good topics. So yeah, these 3 books together were so good. Highly recommend for any, I would say, upper elementary, middle school age, these would be appropriate for. But yeah, loved these. So glad that we have them in my kids' library now. All right, so that's what I read before Reading Rush. Oh, I also read 2 audiobooks. So I listened to Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I have listened to all of her books, her 2 previous books, and this one, everybody is saying this is their favorite one of the 3. I don't agree. I like The Poet X the best. That's my favorite one still. I like that one so much. This one for me was, let me see, I actually don't even remember. This one for me was only a 3-star read for me. This follows 2 girls. I don't even remember Yahara and I don't even remember now what the 2 girls' names were. But one of them lives in New York City and one of them lives in the Dominican Republic. And they have the same dad, but they are unaware of each other. They don't know the other person exists. And so they don't find out until their dad dies in a plane crash, which is based off of a real plane crash that happened shortly after 9/11. And a lot of the people on board the plane were members of the Dominican community, and so it was a very, very tragic thing that happened that doesn't get a lot of attention, but it all kind of focuses around that. So their father perishes in this airplane crash, and at that point they are brought into each other's knowledge. And so it's just kind of the exploration of how they each feel about that. You're bouncing back and forth point of views. With the audiobook, sometimes there were two different narrators, but it was kind of hard to determine who was who. Sometimes Elizabeth Acevedo did one of the voices and then somebody else did the other one, and it was kind of hard to decipher between the two. I did enjoy the book. It just wasn't a favorite of mine. So yeah, there is a lot of talk in here about the difference of growing up in the United States versus the Dominican or the Dominican Republic, and kind of how the girl that lived in the Dominican Republic is the one, I can't remember her name now, but how she felt about possibly going to the United States someday, how, she worked through all that. It has to do with sexism, a lot of that in here. And so, yeah, it was good. It just, like I said, wasn't my favorite. I also listened to The Air Affair by Heather Cox and Jessica Morgan, which is the sequel to The Royal We, which came out years ago, and I listened to years ago. But The Royal We is kind of a, fan fiction, maybe-ish story that's kind of based around, a Will and Kate type of scenario. But now I think it'd be more Harry, Meghan, because in the book, the Prince of Wales, not Wales, it's something else in the book. In the book, one of the princes in England is marrying an American, and so she goes over there, she's going to marry the prince, and it has to do with kind of the build up to their wedding and how it feels like kind of getting into that environment and their group of friends and how that dynamic works, and his brother and how her relationship with his brother and how that kind of works and all of that. And so this is the sequel to that book. In this book, we deal with a lot of fallout from what happened in the first book, which I honestly had forgotten most of it. And so getting back into it was a little rough at the beginning. I'm like, wait, what happened? I don't even remember now. So but we do deal with a lot of the fallout from the first book. This book deals a lot with infertility, and that might be a spoiler, but it does. It deals a lot with that and with just trying to conceive sort of things. I mean, it's called The Air Affair. It's about them as they get married, they're newlyweds, now what? He's the Prince of England and she is trying to figure out what she's going to do with her life now, and just the family dynamic that's going on. There's a lot going on in this book, almost too much. I gave this one 4 stars because it was just a fun read for me. It wasn't anything super serious. I didn't think it needed to be anything really serious, but it almost, like Catherine Center's book that I read a while ago, Things You Save in a Fire, I kind of had the same feeling about that, where it just almost tackled too many things in one book, and I feel like some of it probably could have been edited out to make a more, focused story, but it was still really good, and it was a fun read, so I read that. That was my book that I listened to on vacation. I also DNF'd a book, which I did not include on this list, so I'll talk about that super quickly. I DNF'd Ted Decker's book, Black. Yeah, Black was the one. My husband read them years ago and really, really liked them. He's been wanting me to read them for a while, so we decided we would listen to the audiobook on vacation, and the audiobook narrator was so bad. We made it about 60% of the way in, and I'm like, I can't do it anymore. On top of that, the story, for me, I know so many people love that book series. It's called The Circle series by Ted Decker. It's a Christian fiction, and for me, it just wasn't working. It was too confusing. The writing was not good at all, in my opinion. The dialogue was cheesy. It was just a mess. So I DNF'd that one. I also read 50 pages in Outlander, so I didn't finish it, but I also read that while I was on vacation. Oh, my hair. So yeah, Rabbit Trail. Okay, this isn't gonna work. My hair needs to stop. Okay, now we're into the books that I read during Reading Rush. I daily vlog during Reading Rush, so you can go back to those vlogs to get more detailed descriptions about each of these books. But briefly, I read And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I really enjoyed this. I think initially I said I was going to give it 5 stars, and now I'm like, maybe it's more of like a 4.5 because it's kind of forgettable, honestly, because it moves so fast. It's really well done, but I feel like it was just, it was a lot at the beginning because you have 10 characters that all go to this island and then they start dropping like flies and you don't know what's happening. But the 10 characters right at the beginning, and it's really short, so you're trying to remember who's who, and especially I listened to the audiobook, and so it was really kind of confusing to figure out who was who at the beginning, but I did really, really enjoy it, so 4.5, and I'm excited to read more Agatha Christie eventually. I also read my manga, first manga I've ever read, and this was on my 2020, actually both of these and one of these other books were all on my 2020 TBR, so good progress on that this month. But yeah, I just wanted to read a manga, and so this one looked good. I ended up buying this one because my library didn't have it, and now I kind of wish I wouldn't have. I wish I would have picked a different manga that my library had to start with, because I don't think I realized that the mangas, the reason they're such long series is because nothing really happens in each of the books. It's just like a little snippet out of the story. It's not like a series of books where you get a full story in each book and there's like some sort of conclusion within the book. Like this one just ends and then you're supposed to find the next one, and my library doesn't have them, so I probably will never finish it. But this follows these kids, Emma, Norman, and Ray, who basically live at this orphanage, and then one day they realize that the orphanage is not what they thought it was, and it kind of delves into a horror aspect of things. But yeah, it was good. I gave it 4 stars because for what it was really well done. It just wasn't for me, I don't think. And so, I don't know. You can, like I said, look more at my vlogs if you want to hear more. I also listened to the audiobook of Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, finally. Gave this one 4 stars. It was really cute. I really liked it. It just wasn't like a middle grade book that was like, whoa, that was so amazing. So it was a 4-star read for me. But yeah, this was cute, sad, but cute. There was actually, in this, there was a passage towards the end of this, I'm never going to be able to find it, but Charlotte talks about how, you know, you will continue on to see, like, the leaves and fall and the next snow in winter and all this stuff, like, life goes on sort of thing, and it was so opportune for the time that I was reading it, because, like, this summer has been rough, guys. I mean, and it felt good to hear that. Like, life is going to keep going on, and things are going to be fine, and you're going to get to the next phase, and it's going to be okay, right? All right. I also read another middle grade, Breadcrumbs by Anne Ursu. This was a cover buy for me. I bought this at a thrift store a while ago, and I just really like the cover, honestly, and I will probably keep it because I really like the cover. It was a 3-star read for me. This one we follow our main character, I don't remember what her name was now, Hazel. Hazel has her best friend Jack, and they're kind of getting to that age once again where girls and boys, they feel like it's really hard for them to just be friends. People keep trying to like make it into a romantic thing, and they're like, no, we're just best friends and you guys need to leave us alone. And then one day Jack starts acting really weird, and Hazel thinks something's up, and her mom's like, you know what, nope, boys are just like that. They're gonna move on, and you just need to accept that. And she refuses to accept it, and she thinks that a witch has stolen him and taken him, and so she goes looking for him in this forest. And once she gets into the forest, it's like a magical realm, and so there's a lot of magical realism going on, and she has to try to save Jack. And so it was really good. I feel like the first part of the book I liked, but it was a little slow, and then the second part of the book was like way too fast. It was just like boom 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 boom, and not a lot of it made a lot of sense. So it was a 3-star read for me, but it was still really good. All right. I also read The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. This has been highly, highly anticipated for me this year. I ended up purchasing the book because the cover was so dang beautiful. And this follows Mozart's sister. So it's historical fiction and magical realism. like all tied into one. And so it follows Mozart's sister, who is also a musician, a prodigy, musical prodigy. Wow, words. And so we follow her from a young age. Like when the book starts, she's 8 years old. And I think when it ends, she's 18. So we kind of follow her through the growing up years. And she wants to be a musician too, but back then it was really hard. Like for women, once you hit 18, you were done performing in front of other people. Like you couldn't do that anymore. You could do it as a child, but you couldn't do it as a woman. Also, women were not allowed to compose music, and she really wanted to write her own music. And she even like just jotting things down at home, she was nervous her father would find out and get really angry with her. So we're discussing a lot of those topics within here, but also in part of it, she makes this wish that she doesn't want to be forgotten. And after that, she starts kind of confronting or finding herself coming face to face with this magical fairy. And he keeps taking her to this kingdom of Back. And each time she goes to the kingdom of Back, you're finding out a little bit more about the kingdom of Back and a little bit more and kind of who this fairy is. His name's Hyacinth, and what his motives are and what he's doing. And he kind of is trying to help her with her wish, but also wants something from her at the same time. It was a 4.5-star read for me. I really like this. I've seen a lot of people giving this low reviews, and I understand that this is very, very different from what Marie Lu normally writes. For me, the end of the book and the author's note made this book for me. Totally like clinched the 4.5 rather than like a 3.5 for me. I really liked the way that the book ended, and I really liked the author's note in the end. The book has to end a certain way because it's history, and like she doesn't become a famous composer. Like we know that already. And so you can't change history, but at the same time, like what other avenues can you take? So I personally really love that. I also loved the writing in that book. The descriptions of the magical kingdom and the descriptions of music were so beautiful. Loved it so much. All right. And then we come to, this is the last book that I read for Reading Rush, and this is probably my favorite book that I read this month. This might even be in my top books of the year, guys. I loved this book so much. The Martian by Andy Weir. I know I am so late to this game. This has been on my TBR for forever, and I've just never read it because the audiobook wasn't available, and it takes a lot for me to pick up physical books. I have to have a motivator. And so for me, my motivator was the Reading Rush. Last year, it got me to pick up another one that I had been holding out on for a long time, and both of them are now like favorites of mine, and both of them are sci-fi. So there's that. But this follows Mark Watney, who basically went on this mission to Mars and was abandoned there by his crew. His crew thought he was dead. He wasn't. Now he has to try to survive on Mars. The only problem is the next mission to Mars isn't coming for another 4 years. So how is he going to survive for 4 years on Mars with limited supplies and all that? This is very science heavy, I will say that. So a lot of people I know have said like some of the science lingo was getting too much for them. I loved it though. For me, the science behind it just made it all that much better. Also, Mark Watney, his sarcasm, oh my goodness, so funny. So funny. Yeah, there is some language in this, I will say that, which was a little off-putting, but for me, language for me in books, if it's completely just like not necessary and just very flippant and overused, I will DNF a book for that. For this, it was not like that. It was sparse. It was in there. It was sparse though, and I felt like it was only used in situations where like somebody would actually say that, because somebody who doesn't swear a lot would be like, oh crap, and so it didn't bother me. It didn't deter me from the story, and I loved it so much. It made me believe that what was happening actually happened. I ended up watching the movie after I read this with my husband, and the movie was good. I love Matt Damon as Mark Watney. However, they left so many obstacles that he faces in the book, they left out of the movie. And I hated that because for me, watching the movie, I'm like, they're making this too easy for him, you know? So, so highly recommend this book. This will be one that I will reread at some point because I just loved it so much. All right. And then after the reading rush, I managed to finish my 2 read-along books. So I finished up Rainbow Valley by Ellen Montgomery. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This one was good. Anne is like not in this book hardly at all. She's like a tertiary character. And so her kids are in it a little bit, but really we're following a completely different family's kids. And so a different group of kids and kind of their adventures. But I loved it. I loved this book. I loved getting to follow these kids around and learning about them and seeing their adventures and all that. So I enjoyed it. It was a 4-star read. It's one of the better ones out of the series, to be honest, in my opinion. Not all of them have been winners for me. And then last but not least, I finished up Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince and then watched the movie. The movie was actually pretty good compared to the book, like side to side. I was really discouraged last month when I read Order of the Phoenix and loved it and then watched the movie and realized that the movie for that book is so bad. But the movie for this one was pretty decent. And I enjoyed this one. It's not my favorite of the series by a long shot, but it was good. Lots of backstory in this one. I still gave it 5 stars because it's so needed for the book to really get us to that final book. And so, yeah, really enjoyed it. All right, that's it. That's what I read this month. So like I said, 13 books, 1 DNF, and then I read 50 pages out of Outlander, which will be an ongoing thing, I'm sure. So I had 3 5-star reads. So 3 5-star reads, a handful, 2 3-star reads. Oh my goodness. Starting over. All right. So I had 3 5-star reads, 2 3-star reads, and then the rest were 4-star reads. I only read 2 library books this month, guys. Everything else was off my shelves, so that's great. I did only physically read the graphic novels. Everything else was audiobook. Oh, and The Martian. So the graphic novels and The Martian were my only physical reads this month. Everything else was audiobook. And you know what? I'm gonna have months like that, and that's okay. And then I read 3 adult books, 3 young adult books, and 2, 4, 6, 7 middle grade books, and then the 4 graphic novels. So those are the stats that I keep track of. So yeah, that was my reading month. I hope that your reading month went well for August. Or for July. I'm hoping that August goes well as well. I can't talk today. So yeah, but I'm excited for August. I have a lot of middle grade going in August because I'm doing a couple of readathons, so I think that that'll be fun. And yeah, just things in the works. So anyway, if you have any comments about any of these books, as always, I would love to hear them in the comment section down below. And yeah, you can also, in case you didn't know, my Instagram is linked down below as well as my Goodreads, so you can find me in those 2 places if you would like to connect there. I would love to chat with you either of those 2 places as well. And yeah, other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya!